Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
In the deep and echoing heart of Hogwarts Castle, far below the bustling Great Hall and the candlelit corridors, where students whispered secrets after curfew, lay a passage few living souls had ever walked. It twisted like a serpent beneath the dungeons, lined with damp stone and the scent of age-old magic. Some said it was built long before Hogwarts itself, a leftover from a darker age when wizards experimented with powers that even Salazar Slytherin had forbidden. It was in these forgotten tunnels that a boy once wandered, a boy named Tom Riddle. He was 16, clever beyond his years, and possessed of a quiet, unsettling charm that made teachers praise him and students fear him without quite knowing why. That evening, as rain lashed against the castle windows and thunder growled above the turrets, Tom descended the narrow staircase behind the potions classroom, carrying only his wand and a flickering lantern. He had heard a whisper, a rumor really, from an old book in the restricted section. It spoke of a 7th chamber sealed centuries ago, containing the relics of a wizard who had once taught at Hogwarts, a man expelled for practicing forbidden spells. The book had not named him, but it hinted that his portrait still lingered somewhere in the castle's depths, trapped between life and death. Tom's lantern swayed as he reached the bottom step. The air was colder here, thick with dust and enchantment. He muttered, "Lumos," and the end of his wand flared to life, pushing back the gloom. A passage stretched before him, its ceiling low and arched. Water dripped steadily from the stone above, forming small puddles that rippled as he passed. Riddle walked with measured steps, alert to every sound, the flutter of unseen wings, the distant echo of water. He was not afraid. Fear, he had long decided, was a weakness, and he prided himself on having none. At the end of the corridor, he found it, a wall carved with runes older than any he had seen. They twisted and shimmered faintly in the wand light. In the center, a serpent was etched in relief, coiled around a circle of runic symbols. Tom's eyes gleamed. He pressed his hand to the serpent's head and whispered in Parseltongue, the language of snakes, "Open." The wall shuddered. Stone scraped against stone as the serpent's mouth yawned open, revealing a hidden door that swung inward with a low groan. Inside was a circular chamber lined with dark marble. Dust lay thick upon the floor, and cobwebs veiled the corners like tattered curtains. The air smelled of parchment and old magic. In the center of the room hung a single portrait, suspended on the wall, as if time itself had forgotten to reclaim it. The painting depicted a tall man with hollow cheeks, black robes, and eyes that gleamed with a strange, shifting light. Though painted centuries ago, there was an unsettling sharpness to those eyes, as though the man behind them were watching even now. Tom stepped closer. "You must be the one they tried to erase," he murmured. The figure in the portrait stirred, slowly raising his head. "And you," said the painted wizard, his voice deep and smooth as smoke, "must be the one they whisper about in the corridors. Tom Riddle." Tom's grip tightened on his wand. "You know my name." "I know many names," said the portrait. "But yours, boy, yours carries an echo, an ambition I have not felt in centuries. Tom's curiosity burned brighter. Who are you? I was once called Professor Alaric Morven. I taught defense against the dark arts, long before your time. But the headmaster found my lessons too effective. Tom tilted his head. You taught dark magic. I taught truth, Morven said softly, and truth frightened them. They cast me out, locked away my works, sealed this chamber. But the castle remembers me, the stones remember. For a long moment neither spoke. The lantern flame flickered, throwing shifting shadows across the portrait's face. Then Morven leaned forward within his frame, his painted eyes gleaming. Tell me, Tom Riddle, why have you come? Tom's voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. To learn what others fear to teach. A smile crept across Morven's face. Then you are my student now. The torches along the chamber walls flared to life, though no hand touched them. The air trembled with power. And Tom Riddle, standing in that forgotten room beneath Hogwarts, felt something stir deep within him. A thrill like cold fire. He had found a teacher who would not warn him against the darkness, but would open its gates. Outside thunder rolled again, shaking the ancient castle to its foundations. And beneath it all, a voice whispered through the stones, the beginning of the end has come. Days passed, then weeks, and Tom Riddle returned to the hidden chamber again and again. The castle itself seemed to guide him now. Doors he had never noticed before stood ajar when he approached. Staircases aligned in his favor, and the shadows seemed almost to whisper his name. He came always at night when the common room was silent, and even the ghosts drifted drowsily through the halls. Each visit, the portrait of Alaric Morven waited for him, patient and unnervingly alive. At first, their lessons were simple, incantations from an age before Hogwarts, half-forgotten spells that twisted light and shadow into obedience. Tom absorbed them all with frightening ease. He had long suspected he was destined for greatness, but now he began to see that greatness taking form. You have talent, Morven often said, his voice echoing softly from the painted walls. But talent alone is nothing. Magic demands sacrifice. I've given more than most, Tom would reply coolly, eyes glinting. Not yet, murmured the portrait. Not yet. It was during the third week that Morven began to show him the true magic, the kind that even the restricted section dared not speak of. Tom stood before the portrait as the painted wizard raised his hand and traced a sigil in the air. It burned faintly blue before vanishing into mist. This, said Morven, is a charm that severs a bond between souls, dangerous, painful, useful. Tom's curiosity sharpened. For what purpose? For freeing yourself, Morven replied, from pity, from love, from every chain that weakens the will. Tom watched, silent but thoughtful. He had already learned that compassion was a weakness, that kindness slowed ambition. Yet something in Morven's words seemed to reach deeper, as though the portrait spoke not to his mind, but to the dark, coiled hunger at the core of his being. Morven smiled, faintly sensing it. You see it, don't you? The truth of power. It is not in strength, nor knowledge, nor blood. It is in control of oneself and of others. Riddle met his gaze. Show me more. And Morven did. That night Tom learned how to twist a curse so that it hid beneath ordinary magic, how to make a spell obey one will and reject another. He learned the principles of ancient runes designed to trap a soul, the way dark wizards once anchored fragments of life to objects so that death could not claim them fully. Morven spoke of these things not as myths, but as methods, rituals perfected in ages long gone. "There is one curse," Morven whispered one night, "that divides a soul and keeps a portion tethered to the world. It was forbidden before your ministry ever existed. It requires intent beyond cruelty. It requires belief that your soul is worth shattering for immortality." Tom's eyes gleamed in the torchlight. "You're speaking of Horcruxes." Morven's painted eyes flickered with amusement. "Ah," the word survived then. "Yes, though few ever grasped the true art. Most who tried were destroyed by it." Tom smiled faintly. "Then they were unworthy." The portrait's expression changed. Part pride, part something darker. "Perhaps, but even the worthy pay the price." The following days were filled with whispers of forgotten incantations and lessons written in dust upon the marble floor. Tom took notes on scraps of parchment and burned them afterward, leaving no trace. He became a shadow among his classmates, polite but distant, his charm cool and flawless as glass. Yet as he grew stronger, strange things began to stir. The serpents carved into the walls of the chamber seemed to move when he passed, their stone eyes glinting like living jewels. The air trembled faintly whenever he spoke a curse aloud. Once, he thought he heard laughter, not from Morven, but from somewhere deeper within the walls, a voice that did not belong to the painting. When he mentioned it, Morven's painted features turned grave. "Do not listen too closely to the echoes," he warned. "The castle remembers what it has lost." Tom frowned. "And what has it lost?" Morven's smile returned, slow and knowing. "Many things, perhaps even me." That night, Tom dreamt of a figure cloaked in black, standing before a great mirror. Its surface shimmered with 1,000 reflections, but none of them showed his face. Instead, each reflection bore a different image: a snake, a skull, a crown, a flickering flame, and behind them all, a shadow moved, tall and terrible, whispering in a voice that sounded like Morven's, and yet not. When he awoke, he was certain of two things. First, that Alaric Morven had once been more than a teacher, and second, that whatever bound the wizard to that portrait was no mere enchantment. The next evening, Tom confronted him. "You're not just a memory trapped in paint," he said quietly. "You're something else, something alive." Morven regarded him for a long moment. Then he smiled faintly. "You learned quickly?" "Yes, boy, I am not what I appear. When the headmaster ordered my portrait sealed, I wove a charm to keep my essence bound within it. Half of me died that day. The other half remained." "Then you are a ghost," said Tom. "No," said Morven softly. "A ghost is a remnant without will. I am persistence. I endured death, though not as I wished, and now I seek to live again." Tom's heart quickened. "You want a body?" Morven's eyes gleamed. "You offer one?" Silence fell. For the first time, Tom felt something like unease, but Morven only smiled. "Do not fear me, boy. We are alike. I gave everything for knowledge, as you will, but I can show you how to do what I could not, how to divide your soul without losing your mind. All I ask is that you carry my name into eternity, that you remember who first opened the door." Tom hesitated, then slowly he nodded. "Teach me." And with that, the pact was sealed, not in blood or ink, but in the quiet meeting of two ambitions burning in the same dark fire. As Tom turned to leave, the torches dimmed. Morven's portrait flickered once, and for an instant the painted eyes were gone, replaced by something hollow and vast, like the emptiness between stars. The voice that followed him, Up the stair, whispered softly, almost lovingly, "One day, my student, they will fear your name, and through you, they will remember mine." Tom Riddle was no longer the same boy who had descended into the dungeons weeks ago. Something had shifted within him, something unseen yet unmistakable. His eyes had taken on a colder gleam. His voice carried a stillness that made others draw back when he spoke. Even Professor Dippet, who had always praised his excellence, began to glance at him with a faint unease he could not name. Tom kept to himself more than ever, his studies flawless, his demeanor polite. Yet beneath the calm exterior, his mind raced with a feverish hunger. The lessons from Alaric Morven burned in his thoughts, unfolding like pages of a dark scripture. Every night when the castle slept, he returned to the chamber. The path no longer frightened him. It welcomed him. The air itself seemed to breathe in rhythm with his footsteps, and the shadows on the walls bowed away from his light as if they recognized their master. Morven awaited him as always, but the portrait had changed. Its colors were darker now, as though the paint had aged centuries overnight. The eyes glowed faintly in the torchlight. "You look different," Tom said. "So do you," Morven replied. "Our fates intertwine now. The more you learn, the more I awaken." "Good," said Tom simply. "Then teach me what remains." Morven studied him for a long moment. "There is a ritual, an ancient rite known only to a handful of wizards in all history. It grants mastery over death, though not the way fools imagine. Do you have the will to face it?" Tom's lips curved faintly. "You already know the answer." The portrait's eyes flickered with satisfaction. "Then listen well." For the next several nights, Morven spoke of the rite of division, a process so perilous that even those who sought immortality feared it. It was not a simple curse, but an act of will, one that required the wizard to sever his own soul and bind a fragment of it to a chosen vessel. The price was great, agony beyond measure, and a permanent scar upon the spirit. Tom wrote nothing down, but every word carved itself into his memory. He asked questions, precise, thoughtful, and coldly intelligent. Morven answered them all, his voice filled with a strange pride. "You understand, then," he said one night. "To live forever, one must first be willing to die." "I understand," Tom replied, "and I am willing." But Morven's smile did not return this time. "Be careful, boy. Power is a mirror. Stare too long, and it will show you what you truly are." Tom turned away, his expression unreadable. "Then I have nothing to fear." As the nights wore on, the chamber grew restless. The torches flickered without cause, the walls whispered in tongues, neither of them spoke. Sometimes faces seemed to flicker in the marble, ghostly echoes of students, long dead. Morven told Tom to ignore them, yet the boy felt their presence pressing closer each night. Then came the night when the castle itself seemed to shudder. A storm raged outside, wind howling through the stone passages. The dungeons trembled with each peal of thunder. Tom descended the staircase as always, but tonight the path was darker than usual, the air colder. When he entered the chamber, he saw at once that something was wrong. The portrait's eyes were closed, and the figure of Alaric Morven appeared half-faded, as though the paint had been smeared by unseen hands. "Morven?" Tom called softly. The eyes opened slowly, and the voice that answered was faint, distant, almost broken. "It is time." "For what?" "For the trial." The torches flared violently, filling the chamber with red light. The serpent on the wall began to move, its stone body writhing as cracks spread through the marble floor. A cold wind surged through the room, carrying whispers in languages Tom could not understand. Morven's voice deepened, echoing like 100 voices speaking as one. You have sought the path of immortality. You have studied the forbidden. Now you must prove your worth. Tom raised his wand. I am ready. The painting's surface rippled like water. A beam of light burst forth, striking Tom squarely in the chest. The air roared, and suddenly the chamber was gone. He stood in a vast void surrounded by mist. The ground beneath him was not stone, but shadow, shifting and alive. From the mist emerged figures, countless faces he recognized from memory. Orphanage children who had feared him, students who had envied him, teachers who had praised him. Each one looked upon him with hollow eyes, their mouths whispering one word, murderer. Tom's jaw tightened. Illusions, he said coldly. You cannot harm me. But when he raised his wand, nothing happened. The faces moved closer, merging into a tide of gray forms. Then he saw himself, another Tom Riddle, identical but older, his expression twisted by pride and cruelty. The double's voice was smooth and sharp. Do you see it now? It asked. What you will become. Tom met its gaze without flinching. Stronger, greater. The reflection smiled darkly. You are not ready. And then the figure lunged. The two collided, light and shadow bursting outward. The world became a storm of color and sound. Tom fought with every ounce of his will, striking at his twin, feeling each blow echoed in his own chest. Pain seared through him, not of the body but of the soul. In the distance, Morven's voice thundered. To divide the soul, one must destroy the self. Tom screamed, the sound swallowed by the storm. The twin's hand seized his throat, eyes blazing. You are weak, it hissed. No, Tom gasped. I am eternal. With a final surge of strength, he drove his wand forward, striking through the image of himself. There was a flash of light, and the void shattered. He awoke in the chamber, collapsed upon the cold floor. The torches had gone out, only the faint glow from Morven's portrait remained. The painted wizard looked drained, his features pale and drawn. You did it, he whispered. Few have survived. Tom rose slowly, trembling but unbroken. I saw myself, he said softly, and I killed him. Morven nodded. Then your path begins. Tom lifted his head, his eyes now darker, deeper. There was something new in them, a glint of power that had not been there before. Tell me the rest, he said, but Morven only smiled faintly. Not tonight. The soul must heal before it can be torn again. Tom turned toward the door. As he reached it, he paused. Professor, he said without looking back, if you sought immortality too, why did you fail? Behind him, the portrait's voice came soft and cold. Because I trusted another to finish what I began. Tom left the chamber in silence, but as he vanished into the shadows, Alaric Morven's painted eyes flickered, and for the briefest instant, the face in the portrait was not the teacher's, but Tom's own. The next day dawned gray and heavy over the castle, though no sunlight touched the stone. The rain had stopped, yet the clouds hung low, brushing against the towers like dark, drifting veils. Hogwarts felt older that morning, quieter, as though the building itself was holding its breath. Tom Riddle sat in the library, his expression unreadable. Around him lay a careful arrangement of books, advanced defensive charms, secrets of the serpent tongue, and a single volume bound in black leather, its spine unmarked. He had found it behind a false shelf, its pages sealed by enchantment. The instant he opened it, he felt it pulse faintly, as if something within recognized him. He turned the pages with deliberate calm, though his pulse quickened with every line. The text spoke of soul-binding, memory displacement, and the ancient art of anchoring essence to material form. It mirrored much of what Morven had taught him, but here the words were colder, more precise. The writer had known what they were doing, and worse still, Tom could feel Morven's voice in the writing, faint but unmistakable. A shadow fell across the table. Professor Slughorn stood behind him, smiling kindly. "My boy, I hardly ever see you in the library during daylight, researching something special." Tom shut the book gently and looked up. "Just a bit of history, sir. Old theories of magical endurance." Slughorn chuckled. "Ah, the old legends of eternal life. Fascinating, yes, but don't take them too seriously. Most who sought immortality met dreadful ends." Tom smiled politely. "Then they must have done it wrong." Slughorn hesitated. For a heartbeat, something flickered in his eyes. Wariness, perhaps even fear. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "Well," he said briskly, "do come to supper tonight. You missed the last 3, and people will begin to think you're hiding from the world." Tom nodded. "Of course, sir." When Slughorn left, the boy's polite smile faded. He reopened the book, tracing one particular line with his fingertip. "To separate the soul once is to divide the heart. To do so again is to destroy it. Only through cunning may both be preserved." He closed the volume softly. "Then cunning is what I will have," he whispered. That night, the moon rose pale and cold. Tom returned to the chamber. He had not meant to. He had told himself he would rest. But something called him there, a pull like gravity. The serpents on the walls glimmered faintly as he entered, their eyes lit by torchlight. The portrait of Alaric Morven was waiting, but its colors had changed again. The background seemed deeper, the shadows longer, and Morven himself looked younger than before, as though the lines of age had been painted away. "You've grown stronger," the portrait said. "I feel it." Tom inclined his head. "Your book confirmed what you taught me." Morven's smile deepened. "Ah, so you found it. Excellent. Then you are ready for the next step." He gestured with one hand, and the walls of the chamber began to ripple, the marble shifting as though alive. In its place rose an altar of black stone. Upon it lay a small silver dagger, its edge gleaming with a cold, metallic light. Tom regarded it calmly. "What is this?" "The instrument of binding," said Morven. "You must understand what you seek to command. A wizard who wishes to master death must first touch it." "I've already faced death." "Facing is not the same as feeling," Morven murmured. "Blood anchors magic. You will offer yours now, not in sacrifice, but in proof." Tom hesitated only a moment before stepping forward. He took the dagger in hand. It was perfectly balanced, its handle warm, as if alive. He drew the blade across his palm, a clean, deep cut. Blood welled up, dark and vivid. He let it fall onto the altar. The chamber trembled. The blood hissed as it touched the stone, vanishing into its surface like ink absorbed by paper. The torches dimmed. Morven's voice filled the air, distant and echoing. "Your offering is accepted. But now comes the question, my pupil. Will you give more?" Tom frowned. "More? You must choose an object to bear your will, a vessel strong enough to hold a fragment of you. Choose wisely. Once done, your essence will cling to it until the end of time." Tom thought for a long moment. His mind went to the small trinkets he kept hidden, a diary, a ring, a locket stolen from an ancient vault. But then his gaze lifted to the portrait. "You used the painting," he said. Morven inclined his head. "Yes, it was my masterpiece, and my curse. The canvas bound my spirit, but it trapped me as well. Learn from my error." Tom's eyes narrowed. "You failed because you made it your prison, not your weapon." A faint chuckle escaped the portrait. "Perhaps, but you see what others never did. You understand the difference." The chamber fell silent. Then Morven leaned forward, his painted eyes sharp as blades. "When your time comes, remember this. To live forever is not to hide from death, but to bind it in chains of your own making." The torches flared. Tom turned toward the exit, the dagger still slick with his blood. As he left, Morven's voice followed him. "Tell me, Tom, what will you anchor your soul to?" Tom did not answer. He returned to the Slytherin common room long past midnight. The emerald light of the underwater lamps cast rippling shadows on the walls. Students slept, unaware of the figure that crossed silently among them. Tom went to his trunk and drew out a small black diary bound in worn leather. He opened it to the first page. "My name is Tom Marvolo Riddle." He stared at the words for a long moment, then added beneath them, "And I will never die." The ink shimmered faintly before settling into the page, as though it too acknowledged the vow. But something stirred in the reflection on the window beside him. A flicker, the faint outline of another face. Alaric Morven's eyes gleamed from the glass, smiling faintly. "Well done, my student," the reflection whispered. "You have taken the first step toward eternity." Tom did not flinch. He only closed the diary, slipping it carefully back into the trunk. Outside, thunder rolled across the lake, and deep beneath the castle, the sealed chamber pulsed once with light before falling dark again. And in that darkness, a painted figure stirred, smiling faintly as it whispered to itself, "At last, the boy becomes the man, and the man, the legend." But the portrait's laughter that followed was not quite human. It was something older, something that did not belong wholly to this world. Winter descended upon Hogwarts, wrapping the castle in a white silence. Snow gathered on the towers like dust upon forgotten crowns, and the lake turned to dark glass beneath the gray sky. Inside, the fires burned bright. Laughter echoed in the great hall, and the air was filled with the scent of roasted chestnuts and pine. But Tom Riddle watched all this with cool detachment. He had little interest in warmth or company. To him, the season meant little more than longer nights. Nights made for study and secrets. He had not returned to the hidden chamber for nearly a month, though he felt its presence constantly in his thoughts. At times he swore he could hear Morven's voice whispering from the shadows, faint as a sigh. The bond between them, forged in that ancient ritual, was not easily broken. The diary had become his true companion now. At first, he had written within it, as any student might, questions, reflections, fragments of spells. But soon the ink began to move of its own accord, answering him. Words formed where he had written none, sentences that carried the smooth, eloquent tone of the portrait below. "You are restless," the diary wrote one night when Tom sat alone in the common room, the fire burning low. "I am ready," Tom murmured. "I have learned enough to begin." "You have learned much," came the answer, "but not all. Power without temperance is the fastest road to ruin. You must see how it is used in the world." Tom frowned slightly. "The world offers nothing but weakness." then learn from its weakness. The ministry, the professors, even your friends, each believes themselves righteous. Watch them, understand them, and you will rule them. Tom's lips curved faintly. He wrote nothing more, but he did not close the diary. He let it rest upon his knee, the faint shimmer of ink pulsing softly like a heartbeat. The next day, a strange unease spread through the school. A student, a timid Ravenclaw boy named Callum Ward, had vanished overnight. His bed was empty, his books untouched, his wand missing. Whispers raced through the corridors like wildfire. Dumbledore himself searched the grounds, and the castle's ghosts reported nothing. Tom said little, though he watched everything. He knew exactly where the boy had gone. The night before, he had found Callum wandering near the dungeons, drawn by a strange light. Tom had spoken to him gently, as one might to a frightened animal. He had promised to show him something wondrous, a secret place that few had ever seen. And Callum had followed. He remembered the boy's wide eyes as the serpent door opened, the awe, the fear, and then what came after? Tom had not meant to harm him, not truly. The spell Morven had whispered through the diary had required a subject, nothing more. But magic that tampered with the soul was not easily controlled. The boy had screamed once, then had fallen silent, eyes wide and empty, his body collapsing like a puppet with cut strings. When it was done, the chamber's air had shimmered, and Tom felt something stir inside him. Cold and immense, like a door opening in the dark. Morven's laughter had echoed through the stones. Now, as the professors combed the halls, Tom sat quietly in class, his expression calm, his answers flawless. No one looked twice at him. The perfect student, brilliant and untroubled. But that night, when he opened the diary again, Morven's words greeted him with pride. "You have crossed the threshold." "Do you feel it?" Tom wrote. "I feel power. But also something else, as though I am not alone in my own thoughts." "You are not," the diary replied. "Every act of true creation binds the Creator to what he makes. The boy's life has become part of yours. He was the key, and you turned him." Tom paused. "Then I have made my first Horcrux." The ink shimmered faintly. "Indeed, the beginning of eternity, my student. You have done what I could not." Tom leaned back, eyes glinting in the firelight. He should have felt triumph, but instead, there was a quiet disquiet in his chest, like a whisper he could not silence. He ignored it. Weakness was only a remnant of conscience, and conscience was a relic of those who feared consequence. Still, that night he dreamed again. He was in the chamber, standing before the altar, but Morven was not in the portrait. The canvas was empty, torn from within. Something moved behind it, scraping softly as though claws dragged against the frame. A voice, not quite Morven's, spoke from the darkness beyond. "You have opened the way. Now let me through." Tom woke with a start, cold sweat on his brow. The diary lay beside him, shut, the ink dried and still. The next morning the news spread that the missing Ravenclaw boy had been found, though not alive. His body had been discovered at the edge of the forbidden forest, his face pale, his eyes glassy and unseeing. The professors were grim and silent. Dumbledore himself looked older that day, his blue eyes shadowed with sorrow. Tom watched from the corner of the great hall as the boy's body was carried away. He felt no guilt, only a sense of inevitability. One life for power eternal. That was a trade any rational mind would accept. That evening he returned once more to the chamber. The serpent door opened at his whisper, but the air inside was different. The torches burned low, the walls pulsed faintly with light. The portrait was there, but Morven looked changed again. Taller, sharper, his colors richer, his smile too human to be mere paint. "You have done well," he said, his voice no longer the distant echo it once was. "I can feel the blood and the soul upon you. You are becoming whole." Tom regarded him carefully. "You seem stronger." Morven's eyes gleamed. "Your triumph feeds me as it feeds you. The spell that binds us draws from your success. Together, we will become what neither could alone." "Together?" Tom repeated, his tone mild but guarded. "Do not be so quick to fear, boy," said Morven softly. "You and I are bound by purpose. When you ascend, I ascend. When you conquer death, I will walk again in the world of men." Tom's gaze hardened. "You seek to use me?" Morven's smile widened, sharp as a blade. "And you seek to surpass me. That is the nature of power, is it not? Teacher and student, each the other's stepping stone." The torches flickered. For a moment, the portrait's eyes shone not with light, but with depth, like two open windows into the void. Tom did not flinch. "Then we understand each other." He turned to leave. As the serpent door sealed behind him, Alaric Morven laughed softly, the sound echoing long after the boy's footsteps faded. "Ah," the voice murmured to the empty chamber, "so the serpent learns to bite." Above, snow fell upon the castle in soft silence, blanketing its ancient stones. But deep below, something old and hungry had begun to stir, something that wore a boy's face and carried a name the world would one day learn to fear. The winter months waned, and with them the last warmth of innocence in Hogwarts faded. Spring's first light filtered weakly through the high windows, yet the castle felt colder than it had all season. Beneath the laughter of students and the murmur of lessons, something dark wound its way through the stones, an unseen pulse echoing from the depths below. Tom Riddle felt it always, humming faintly in his bones, a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. It was the call of the chamber, of Morven's restless spirit, of the new life that now burned quietly within the diary, hidden beneath his pillow. He wore his calm expression as a mask, but behind it, his thoughts were no longer the thoughts of a student. He had begun to plan. He watched his professors with quiet scrutiny. Dumbledore with his two knowing eyes, Slughorn with his pride and weakness, and the headmaster, old Armando Dippet, whose trust was so easily won. Tom had learned long ago that power was not taken by force. It was offered by those too foolish to recognize its danger. One evening, Dumbledore stopped him in the corridor. The man's eyes were calm, but his voice carried weight. "You have been quieter than usual, Tom. Even for you?" "I have been studying, sir," Tom replied smoothly. "So I hear. And yet I cannot help but feel you study things best left forgotten." Tom met his gaze, smiling faintly. "Surely, Professor, knowledge itself is never to be feared." "Knowledge," Dumbledore said, "is not the danger. What we choose to do with it is." For a moment, the air between them tightened, as though the castle itself held still. Then Dumbledore smiled gently. "Do be careful, Tom. Curiosity is a fine gift, but it burns those who feed it too deeply." Tom inclined his head. "I understand, sir." But he did not, or rather he refused to. That night, when the moon rose full and pale, Tom opened the diary once more. The ink came alive, Morven's words forming with slow, deliberate grace. "He suspects you," the diary wrote. "I expected he would," Tom whispered. "He sees much, but he acts too slowly." Then we must act first. Tom frowned. You speak of action. Toward what end? The headmaster's chamber holds a relic, an amulet of Salazar Slytherin, long kept from the knowledge of the school. I have felt its echo through the walls. It was mine once before they took it. With it we may complete what was begun. Tom hesitated. A Horcrux requires death. You told me that much. Death, yes, but not always of flesh. The soul may feed upon other kinds of loss, betrayal, ruin, despair. Bring me the amulet, and I will show you how. Tom's lips curved into a thin smile. Then I will have it. The castle slept as he moved through its corridors like a shadow. His wand light was dim, his footsteps silent. He passed unseen through secret staircases and forgotten halls, guided by the same intuition that had led him to the chamber. The headmaster's office stood sealed by enchantments, but to Tom, wards were simply locks, waiting for the right hand. He whispered words in parcel tongue, the language that slipped through all barriers of mortal magic. The great stone gargoyle shifted aside, and the spiral staircase rose before him. Inside, the office was silent, save for the ticking of enchanted instruments. Shelves of curious devices lined the walls, and the portraits of old headmasters dozed in their frames. On the desk sat a glass case, and within it, gleaming faintly, was the amulet, silver and green, etched with the mark of the serpent. Tom stepped closer, eyes alight. The air around the relic was cold and still, as though time itself bent away from it. You feel it too, don't you? Came Morven's whisper, not from the diary, but from the very air. Tom nodded. It is powerful. As it was meant to be, take it. He lifted the glass case, shattering the lock with a whispered charm. The amulet pulsed once as his fingers brushed it, and a sudden surge of magic flooded through him. Cold and vast. The portraits stirred. Who goes there? Cried one, his painted face stern. Tom turned sharply. Silencio. The word struck the air, and silence fell once more. He slipped the amulet beneath his robes and turned to leave. But a faint sound stopped him. The door had opened. Dumbledore stood in the threshold, his face unreadable, his wand at his side. I thought I might find you here. Tom's mind raced, but his expression remained calm. I was only curious, sir. The relic of our founder. I wanted to see it for myself. Curiosity again, Dumbledore said softly, and always at night. His gaze flicked to the empty case. Put it down, Tom. For a moment they stood in silence, the young serpent and the wise old phoenix, each measuring the other. Then Tom smiled. You don't trust me. I fear for you, Dumbledore said. Then you should fear yourself for standing in my way. A flick of his wand sent a wave of force through the air, but Dumbledore countered it with a word. Sparks filled the room. The portraits cried out, spells crackled, and the very walls seemed to tremble. At last, Dumbledore raised his hand, and the chaos stilled. Leave this place, Tom, he said, his voice quiet but firm. Take nothing with you. Whatever you think you seek, it will not give you peace. Tom hesitated, but only for an instant. Peace, he said softly, is for those who expect to die. He turned and fled before Dumbledore could answer. The gargoyle sealed behind him, and by the time the headmaster pursued, Tom was gone, swallowed once more by the shadows of the castle. He did not return to his dormitory. Instead, he descended into the dungeons, the amulet burning cold against his chest. The serpent door opened at his word, and he entered the chamber. Morven's portrait waited, alive with color, eyes shining like twin flames. You have it, Tom tossed the amulet onto the altar. "Now teach me." The chamber rumbled, torches flaring. The portrait's frame began to pulse with light, and Morven's voice deepened, layered with something not human. "This relic is the heart of Slytherin's line. Within it sleeps the will of every heir who dared to defy death. Tonight, that will becomes yours." Tom stepped forward, the amulet between them glowing brighter. "Speak the words I taught you," commanded Morven. Tom raised his wand, his voice clear and cold as steel. "Vita descindo, anima mea, divide." A burst of green light filled the room. The amulet blazed, the air crackled, and for an instant Tom's vision shattered. He saw faces, his own, Morven's, and others, merging, fracturing, entwining in a storm of light and shadow. When it ended, Tom collapsed to one knee, breath ragged. The amulet lay on the altar, blackened and still. Morven's portrait now shone like a mirror, his form sharper, his smile triumphant. "It is done," he said. "You have fed the relic, and it has fed me. We are bound, master and pupil, one will, one destiny." Tom rose slowly, his eyes hollow yet fierce. "You are mistaken," he said softly. "There is only one master here." He raised his wand. With a single word, the portrait split from corner to corner, the canvas tearing as light spilled out. Morven's cry filled the air, a sound of fury and loss that shook the stones themselves. Then there was silence. Tom stood alone, the amulet cooling in his palm. The bond was broken, or so he believed. But in the cracked fragments of the painting, something faint still glimmered, watching him as he turned away. And as he climbed back toward the sleeping castle, a whisper echoed through the empty halls, soft as a breath, but sharp as a curse. "You may destroy the teacher, Tom Riddle, but what he taught will destroy you." The following weeks passed in a shadowed stillness. Spring ripened around the castle, the air rich with the scent of rain and new leaves. Yet Hogwarts seemed quieter, more solemn. The professors spoke in hushed tones. The students whispered of strange tremors in the dungeons, and at night, faint echoes of thunder rolled through the stone, as though the earth itself was uneasy. Tom Riddle moved through it all like a figure carved from ice, untouched, unreadable. His calm never faltered, not even when Dumbledore's eyes lingered on him in passing. He studied, he smiled, he charmed. But there was a darkness behind that charm now, a stillness too deep for any boy his age. Only Tom knew the truth. The ritual with the amulet had not gone as planned. He had felt power, yes, a surge that had shaken the very core of his being, but it had come with something else, a whisper in his mind, faint but constant, a voice he could not silence. It was not quite Morven's voice, though it carried the same smooth cadence. This one was deeper, older, threaded with the serpentine echo of ancient magic. "You cannot destroy what has already passed into you," the whisper said. "You carry him now, as he once carried you." Tom ignored it at first, dismissing it as an after effect of the spell. But in the nights that followed, the voice grew clearer. When he closed his eyes, he saw flashes. Morven's eyes behind his own, Morven's smile reflected in the glass. The portrait might be gone, but its essence lived on, and so did its will. He began to notice small changes. His magic felt sharper, faster. Sometimes it leapt from his wand before he spoke a word. Objects trembled when he passed. Mirrors rippled as though reflecting not one figure but two. In class, charms that once required effort came to him as easily as breathing. Yet along with this strength came moments of disquiet, a shadow crossing his thoughts, a flicker of rage that was not entirely his own. One night, as he sat by the fire in the common room, he felt the air grow colder. The flames dimmed to green. He turned sharply, wand in hand. From the far corner, the shadows gathered. They twisted, coiling upon themselves, until the faint outline of a man appeared. A tall figure, in robes of darkness, eyes burning like embers behind a thin, ghostly veil. "Morven," Tom said quietly. The apparition inclined its head. "So you recognize your teacher still? I destroyed you. Did you?" The ghost's lips curved in a smile. "You severed the canvas, yes, but the act bound me to you. When you split your soul, the fragment you cast into the amulet drew mine with it. You made me part of yourself." Tom rose to his feet, fury flashing in his eyes. "Then I will cut you out." Morven's laughter echoed softly, almost fond. "You cannot. You are too much like me. You crave what I craved, the perfection of self, the mastery of life and death. But tell me, boy, can you truly claim the title of master when half of what you are was shaped by my hand?" Tom's wand trembled slightly. For a moment he said nothing. Then he lowered it. "If you are within me," he said coldly, "then you are mine to command." The spirit tilted its head. "Command me?" "Perhaps. But be warned, Tom Riddle. The more you use the power I gave you, the deeper I will root myself within you. One day you will not know where you end and I begin." The shadows thinned, the figure fading into the stone. Only the whisper remained, coiling softly around his thoughts. "We will see, my student." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the high windows, and Tom appeared as composed as ever. He answered questions in class with effortless grace, earned quiet praise from Slughorn, and even smiled at his classmates' jokes. But beneath the surface he could feel it, the presence stirring, watching. That evening, in the room of requirement, he tested his strength. He conjured a circle of flame without incantation, held it in his hand until it burned white hot, then crushed it to ash. The power responded to him like a living thing, obedient yet hungry. Morven's whisper coiled around his mind. "You see, we are greater together. The founders themselves would have trembled before such magic." Tom's voice was calm. "You are nothing but a memory clinging to life. And yet you use me?" He said nothing. Days turned to weeks. The whisper grew quieter, though it never vanished. He began to think of it less as a parasite and more as an instrument, a power to be used, shaped, and mastered. And in mastering it, he mastered himself. But the castle itself was changing. Strange occurrences multiplied. Books vanished from the library and reappeared burned. The serpents carved into the dungeon walls seemed to shift when no one looked. Once, a Slytherin girl fainted after glimpsing something move in the reflection of the common room's windows, a pale shape standing behind Tom, its eyes gleaming like mirrors. Rumors spread quickly. Some whispered that Slytherin's heir had returned. Dumbledore watched in silence. He did not accuse, nor did he speak of what he saw, but his gaze followed Tom wherever he went, heavy and knowing. And one night, Tom found a letter slipped under his door. The parchment was old, the handwriting elegant but unfamiliar. "The time has come to choose who you will be," it read. "You walk the path of two souls. Only one will survive." There was no signature. Tom stared at the letter for a long while before burning it. The flame consumed the parchment in seconds, but its words remained branded upon his mind. That same night he returned once more to the hidden chamber. The serpent door opened at his command, but the torches within burned a strange blue light. The altar was bare, the walls cold, yet the air hummed with magic as if the room were alive. He stood before the cracked remains of Morven's portrait. The torn canvas still shimmered faintly as though breathing. "I am done being your student," Tom said. From within the canvas, faint laughter answered him. "You say that as though you have a choice." Tom raised his wand. "You belong to me." "And yet," the voice replied, "you came here to speak with me." The shadows thickened, rising from the floor, twisting around him like coils of smoke. "Face me," he commanded. The darkness obeyed. Morven's form appeared once more. Not the frail figure of paint, but something vast, made of memory and magic. His eyes were endless, his smile cruel and calm. "You have grown, Tom," he said softly, "and so have I." Tom's wand shone with green fire. "Then let us see who remains." Their duel did not fill the chamber with noise. It silenced it. Every curse they cast was swallowed by the air, every flare of light devoured by shadow. Tom fought with precision, with brilliance, but Morven matched him, spell for spell, thought for thought. It was as though he fought his own reflection. At last, the walls began to crack. The serpents writhed upon the stone, and the altar split in two. Tom shouted a final incantation, "Avada Kedavra!" And green light flooded the room. When it cleared, the chamber was still. The spirit was gone. Only Tom remained, standing amid the ruin, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with a strange, fierce calm. The whisper in his mind was silent at last. Or so he believed. As he turned to leave, the echo of a voice followed him, faint as a breath. "The student and the master are one, and eternity has already begun." He did not look back. The serpent door closed behind him, sealing the darkness once more. Above, dawn touched the towers of Hogwarts, its golden light spilling over stone and snow alike. Yet beneath that light, in the heart of the castle, two souls, one living, one dead, remained bound, and neither would ever truly let go of the other. Summer crept across the castle like a ghost that could not decide whether to linger or depart. The air grew warm and heavy, the lake shimmered like molten silver beneath the sun, and laughter once again filled the courtyards. Yet the joy of Hogwarts could not touch Tom Riddle. He walked among the students as if in another world, quiet, immaculate, untouchable. The traces of the duel with Morven still lived in him. He could feel them in the way the magic moved through his veins, deeper, more obedient than ever before. Every charm he cast bent easily to his will, every barrier crumbled before his mind's command. The darkness that had once whispered now lay silent, folded into the marrow of his being. But power never slept. It waited. Tom began to dream again. Dreams of endless corridors lined with serpents, of doors without handles, of a shadow standing at the far end, always watching. When he woke, his pulse thrummed with energy, and the air around him was warm as breath. He'd begun to suspect that whatever Morven had become now dwelt not beside him, but within him, woven through the thread of his own soul. He did not speak of it. There was no one left to speak to. Even Slughorn, once so fond of him, had grown wary. The professor's gaze followed him often, and his jovial voice always carried an undertone of caution. Dumbledore, too, seemed to linger near wherever Tom was, appearing in corridors without sound, standing in doorways at the strangest times. The man was too perceptive by half. Tom knew he had to leave soon. Hogwarts had given him everything it could. The time had come to find what lay beyond its walls. That evening, he stood alone before the window of the Slytherin common room, the water of the Black Lake shimmering green beyond the glass. Shadows of great fish moved in the depths. The light played across his reflection, and for an instant another face seemed to peer back, paler, older, its eyes faintly aglow. He turned away. From his trunk he withdrew the diary. It had been months since he had written in it. Yet the moment he opened it, the ink began to stir, forming words of its own. "You have grown quiet," it wrote. Tom sat down, his expression unreadable. "There is no need for speech. I have learned all there is to learn." "Have you? You forget my pupil. Knowledge is endless. And there are still truths I have not shown you." Tom tapped his wand once against the open page. "You are dead." The ink swirled, and the answer came slowly. "Then what does that make you, Tom Riddle, whose soul is now divided?" His jaw tightened. "Immortal. Half immortal," came the whisper, "half mine." Tom closed the diary sharply, but the sound did not silence the voice. It lingered in his thoughts as he left the room and began to walk the corridors. The castle was dim. Classes had ended for the day, and the halls were empty. He moved without aim, letting his steps lead him. They brought him, almost inevitably, back to the entrance of the dungeons. He paused before the hidden stairway that led to the chamber. The stones seemed to breathe beneath his touch, cold but alive. For a moment he felt resistance, as though the castle itself was warning him to turn back. Then the way opened and he descended. The chamber waited as before, quiet, vast, the air heavy with memory. The walls still bore the scars of his duel with Morven, though new serpentine carvings had begun to twist among the cracks, as if the stone were repairing itself. On the altar lay the amulet of Slytherin, blackened but intact. It pulsed faintly like the slow beat of a heart. Tom approached, his expression calm. "So," he murmured, "this is where it ends." "Or begins," came a voice behind him. He turned. From the shadows stepped a figure, not the painted Morven, nor the formless ghost that had haunted him before, but something more terrible and complete. The man was flesh now, or close enough to it. His robes were dark as the deep sea, his eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. Tom's grip tightened on his wand. "You cannot be real." "I am as real as you made me," Morven said. His voice was steady, rich with triumph. "When you tore the soul and cast your spell, you forged the bridge between life and death. Through you, I was born again." Tom's heartbeat slowed. "You lived through me?" "Through us," Morven corrected. "Two halves of the same whole, the same ambition, the same hunger." Tom's eyes narrowed. "You mean to take me?" Morven smiled faintly. "Why would I destroy my masterpiece? No, Tom, I would merge with it. Together we could rule not merely this age, but every age to come." Silence fell. Only the slow drip of water echoed in the chamber. Tom stepped forward. "You forget yourself, old man. You taught me your secrets, and now you believe I will share them? You mistake me for the boy you once met." Morven's expression hardened. "And you mistake yourself for a god. Without me, you would never have learned the craft that makes you what you are. You are my creation." Tom raised his wand. "Then I will unmake you." They moved as one, two forces born of the same magic, striking with mirrored fury. Light filled the chamber, a storm of power that cracked the marble floor and sent the serpents writhing upon the walls. Spells collided in bursts of fire and ice, the air splitting with thunder. Tom fought with precision and brilliance, his fury contained within a single perfect calm. Morven matched him blow for blow, his laughter ringing through the din. At last, Morven raised his hand, and the amulet rose from the altar, burning with green fire. "This is the heart of our bond," he shouted. "You cannot kill me while it endures." Tom's voice was a whisper of steel. "Then I will kill it." He drew on every fragment of will he possessed, channeling his strength into a single curse. Reducto Maxima. The spell struck the amulet, shattering it with a blinding flare. The explosion hurled both men to the floor. For a heartbeat, all light vanished. When Tom opened his eyes, the chamber was silent once more. The altar lay in ruins. Morven was gone, his form erased, his presence extinguished. The air was cold and empty, but something was wrong. Tom felt it immediately. A hollow ache opened within his chest, deep and vast. For an instant he saw through two sets of eyes, the boy and the man, the living and the dead. Then the second vision faded, leaving only his own breath, his own pulse. He staggered to his feet, gripping the cracked stone for balance. "It's done," he murmured. Yet as he spoke, a faint whisper brushed his mind. "Is it?" Tom froze. The voice was his own. He looked down at his hands. For a moment, the skin shimmered, pale as candlelight, and beneath it the faint outline of another shape moved, a shadow where a shadow should not be. He laughed quietly, the sound hollow and soft. "Then so be it," he said. "If I carry you, I will carry you as my strength." And with that he turned from the chamber and began the long climb upward toward the sleeping world above. The serpent door sealed behind him. The torches burned out one by one until only darkness remained, and deep within that darkness where the dust had not yet settled, a fragment of the shattered amulet pulsed faintly, alive, waiting. The war between teacher and student was ended, but the price of victory was far from paid. When Tom Riddle emerged from the depths of the castle, dawn had broken across the horizon. The lake shimmered with the pale fire of morning, and the grounds of Hogwarts lay still and quiet, touched by mist. The scent of rain clung to the air, and for a moment it felt as though the entire world had drawn a slow, uncertain breath. He paused upon the stone steps leading from the dungeons, the hem of his cloak brushing the damp flagstones. There was a sharpness in the air he had not felt before, a tingling awareness that stretched beyond the walls of the school. The world seemed thinner now, as though some hidden veil had been torn away. Every sound was clearer, every shadow deeper. He had done what no wizard before him had dared. He had mastered death, not by cheating it, but by binding it, making it serve him. Yet he could not escape the faint echo that whispered through the silence, the shadow of Alaric Morven's laughter, lingering like smoke after a fire. Tom turned his gaze toward the distant towers of the castle. The windows caught the sunlight like mirrors, and for an instant he thought he saw another reflection beside his own, tall, robed, and watching. Then it was gone. The morning bells began to toll, calling students to their lessons. Tom descended the steps, his expression calm, his footsteps silent. He had a part to play still. The charming, brilliant student, the pride of Slytherin House. Let them see what they wished to see. The truth was his alone now. In the great hall, laughter and chatter filled the air, but Tom's presence stilled it wherever he passed. He sat in his usual place, offering polite smiles, speaking little. Only Dumbledore, from the high table watched him with eyes that seemed to pierce straight through the practiced mask. After breakfast, as the students filed out, Dumbledore's voice called softly across the hall. "A word, Tom." Tom turned, his expression the picture of respect. "Of course, Professor." They walked together through the empty corridors. Dust motes swirled in the shafts of light that fell through the tall windows. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the soft echo of their steps. At last, Dumbledore spoke. "There have been disturbances again in the dungeons, spells misfiring, strange tremors. Some say they've heard voices." Tom inclined his head. "Old places hold echoes, sir. Hogwarts is full of them." Dumbledore stopped, studying him. "Yes," he said quietly, "but not all echoes are harmless." Tom met his gaze, and for a heartbeat their eyes locked, the serpent and the phoenix each measuring the other's flame. "You have a great gift, Tom," said Dumbledore, "and great danger in you as well. Power such as yours is not evil in itself, but it calls to things that are. Be wary whom you let answer." "I am always careful, sir," Tom said smoothly. "I have no intention of becoming anyone's puppet." A faint smile touched Dumbledore's lips, though it did not reach his eyes. "See that you don't." He turned and walked away, his robes whispering softly against the floor. Tom remained still for a moment, watching him go. Then he smiled, cold and slight, and continued down the corridor. That night he left the castle. The forbidden forest lay before him, vast and still beneath the moonlight. Its trees stood like pillars of black glass, their branches interlaced high above, blotting out the stars. The creatures of the forest watched him pass, their eyes gleaming faintly through the dark. Yet none dared approach. He moved like a shadow among them, sure of every step. He came at last to a clearing where the remnants of ancient stones jutted from the earth, ruins older than Hogwarts itself. This was where Morven had once performed his earliest rites, or so the diary had told him. Tom could feel it in the ground, the thrum of power like the pulse of a buried heart. He set the broken fragment of the amulet upon the largest stone and drew his wand. "Revertus anima vinculum," he murmured. The earth shuddered. The air grew cold. The shadows lengthened, twisting around him like a cloak. "You cannot call him again," said a voice from behind. Tom turned. A figure stepped from the trees, his long silver beard catching the moonlight. "Dumbledore." Tom's expression did not change. "You followed me." "I feared this night would come," Dumbledore said softly, "when ambition would drive you beyond even Hogwarts' reach." "You cannot stop me," Tom replied. "Not anymore." "Perhaps not," said Dumbledore, "but you must understand, Tom. What you are becoming is not what you think. You cannot contain what you have bound. It will devour you as it devoured Morven." Tom's smile was calm, almost pitying. "Then it will find it has bitten into iron." He raised his wand. The forest erupted in light. Spells clashed, branches splintered, the very air screamed with power. Dumbledore's wards shimmered like golden fire, deflecting curse after curse, but Tom's magic was no longer that of a schoolboy. It struck with the weight of something vast and ancient. "You have learned much," Dumbledore said through the storm. "Too much, perhaps, but you do not yet know yourself." "Then teach me," Tom shouted, voice cracking through the chaos. "If you think yourself my better, show me why." Dumbledore's eyes flared with sorrow and strength. "Because I do not seek to rule what I love." The words struck Tom like a blow, not of magic, but of truth. For an instant, the world seemed to still. Then he turned and vanished into the darkness. When the light faded, Dumbledore stood alone in the ruined clearing, the broken amulet still pulsing faintly upon the stone. He gazed down at it, his expression unreadable, then whispered a spell that sealed it once more. But far beyond the trees, Tom Riddle walked on. The wind carried his name through the forest, soft and low, as though the earth itself had begun to whisper it. He did not look back. He would return to the world beyond Hogwarts now, to the places where history was waiting to be rewritten. There were other relics to find, other fragments to forge, and an empire of shadows yet unborn. He was no longer merely a student. He was the heir of secrets older than the castle, the master of a darkness that now lived beneath his skin. And though Morven's laughter no longer echoed in his ears, the rhythm of it pulsed in his blood. One will, one destiny, the memory whispered. The student and the master are one. Tom Riddle walked beneath the fading moon, his eyes gleaming with cold resolve. The world stretched before him like an unwritten book, and his name, the name he would soon give himself, waited for its first line to be carved into legend. The air trembled faintly as he whispered it, not aloud, but within the chambers of his soul. Lord Voldemort. And far below, in the sealed chamber, where dust lay heavy upon stone, the serpents carved in the walls stirred and smiled in their sleep. Years had passed since Tom Riddle left Hogwarts, yet the castle never forgot him. Its walls still murmured his name in the silence between classes, and the stones of the dungeons still trembled faintly when thunder rolled overhead. Few remembered the boy now, save for Dumbledore, who carried the memory like a wound that would never quite heal. But beyond the castle, in the wide and shadowed world, Tom Riddle had become something else entirely. The wizarding world was peaceful on the surface, still recovering from wars long past, its ministry fat with comfort and pride. Yet beneath that peace, fear was beginning to take root again, quiet and unseen. Whispers spread through dark taverns and lonely alleyways, rumors of a man who could command shadows, who had walked into death and returned untouched. They said his name was Lord Voldemort. No one knew where he lived, nor what face he wore. Some said he had gone east, into the mountains beyond the Black Sea, where ancient magics still slept beneath the snow. Others claimed he haunted the ruins of forgotten castles, collecting relics of power and bending their curses to his will. What was true and what was legend, none could tell. But all agreed on one thing. Wherever he went, death followed, silent and absolute. In the highlands of Albania, beneath a forest older than the oldest trees of Britain, a fire burned in the heart of a crumbling monastery. Voldemort sat before it, cloaked in shadow. Around him lay the remnants of what had once been a grand hall, arches shattered, stone eaten by moss, the floor littered with runes too ancient to read. Before him stood 3 wizards, trembling, their wands lowered. They were seekers of forbidden lore, fools who had tried to summon him to strike a bargain. "You wish to find me?" Voldemort said softly. His voice was like silk stretched over a blade. "You wish to share in my power? Tell me then, what would you give for it?" One of the men stepped forward, pale and shaking. "My allegiance," he said, "my service, my life." Voldemort regarded him with faint amusement. "Your life is already mine the moment you entered this place. You offer nothing I have not taken." The man's lips parted, but before he could speak again, Voldemort raised a hand. Green light flashed, and the wizard fell wordless to the floor. The others did not move. "I do not bargain," Voldemort said quietly. "I teach, as I was once taught." He looked down at the dead man's body, and for a heartbeat, a strange expression crossed his face. Not pity, not remorse, but recognition. Alaric Morven's voice whispered faintly through his thoughts. "You repeat the lesson as all masters do." Voldemort's jaw tightened. "I am no man's echo," he murmured. "You carry me still," the voice said. "In every spell, every breath of power you draw, you may silence my name, but not my will." He stood, the firelight glinting against his pale skin. "Then I shall outlive even your memory," he whispered. The whisper did not answer, but the fire roared higher as though mocking him. That night, he wrote in a new diary, a twin to the one he had kept as a boy, its pages blank and waiting. Upon the first page he inscribed a single line: "There is no teacher, there is no student. There is only the will that endures." He closed the book and set it aside. The night beyond the broken walls was vast and filled with stars, but their light could not reach him. He raised his wand, and the fire went out. The years that followed forged his legend. He traveled the hidden paths of the world, through catacombs and cursed ruins, collecting the remnants of wizards who had sought immortality before him. Their relics became his tools, their souls, his warnings. He learned from ancient shades, from spirits bound in tombs, and from creatures that spoke the languages of the dead. And through it all, the whisper of Alaric Morven remained, a shadow that never faded, sometimes guiding, sometimes mocking. In Egypt, as he traced runes upon the walls of a forgotten chamber, he felt the presence stir again. "You seek to divide the soul further," it said. "But each division weakens you." Voldemort smiled faintly. "You are wrong. Each division refines me. Perfection lies in the parts, not the whole. Then you will learn, as I did, that perfection and destruction are the same." He ignored it. With a sweep of his wand, the chamber filled with a red glow. The spell took shape, and another Horcrux was born. The whisper screamed within him then, faint and fleeting, but he felt no pity for the voice that once had been his master. When he returned to Britain years later, he was no longer the young man who had walked out of Hogwarts. His features had sharpened, his eyes gleamed with an inner fire, and his presence alone made even the most hardened wizards tremble. Those who had once known him as Tom Riddle would not have recognized him now. He gathered followers, ambitious men and women, all drawn by the same hunger that had once driven him. He spoke to them of purity, of destiny, of a new order that would cleanse the world of weakness. Yet behind his words lay something deeper, a purpose no one else could see. They worshipped him as a god, never knowing that their master's true war was not against the ministry but against mortality itself. Still, in the quiet hours when the fire burned low, Voldemort sometimes felt the faintest tremor within his thoughts, a ripple like laughter beneath water. Morven's voice, fainter now but never gone. "You have conquered death, yet death remains your servant. Tell me, Tom, who truly won?" He would answer only with silence, though deep within him he knew the truth. Every time he split his soul, every time he shaped his magic around that void, Morven's presence grew quieter, not because it faded, but because it sank deeper, fusing with his own. The teacher had become the ghost within the pupil, and so the circle closed. When he finally raised his wand against the world, when the first Death Eaters took their oaths and the sky burned green. There was no one left in him who could question what he had become. Only once, years later, as he stood before a mirror in his hidden lair, did he see it clearly. His reflection wavered, and for the briefest instant, the face staring back was not his own. It was older, darker, Alaric Morven's face, smiling. Voldemort did not flinch. "You are gone," he said softly. "No," the reflection whispered. "I am fulfilled." Then it vanished. He turned away, leaving the mirror to its silence. Outside, the night wind howled across the hills, carrying with it the first cries of a world that would soon know his name in terror. The legend of the boy who once sought a teacher had ended. The age of the master who feared nothing had begun. But somewhere in the depths of that boundless night, in the thin space between one breath and the next, the faintest laughter drifted through the dark, low and triumphant, neither living nor dead. The laughter of the wizard who had taught Voldemort dark magic. The rise of the Dark Lord was not swift, though the world would one day remember it as such. Like a shadow creeping at the edges of dawn, he grew slowly patient and unseen, until by the time the sun had risen, the light itself was already poisoned. Tom Riddle, who now called himself Lord Voldemort, moved through wizarding society like a whisper of fire through dry grass. He appeared at first as a charming stranger, an untraceable heir of an ancient bloodline. He gathered scholars, ministry men, pure-blood heirs and wanderers, each seduced by his quiet conviction that magic had been diminished, that wizards were meant for something greater. Those who followed him believed they served destiny. None realized they were feeding a hunger that had begun long before in the depths of Hogwarts. When a boy first spoke to a portrait in the dark, he founded no open order. At first, they were simply the Circle, a fellowship bound by oaths of secrecy. Their meetings were held in ruins and forests, in cellars beneath London, and caves by the sea. There, by candlelight, Voldemort taught them arts that had been banned for centuries, binding charms of blood, enchantments of obedience, the crafting of talismans that could twist the will. He never shouted, never threatened. He merely spoke, and they obeyed. His words carried a weight that drew men's souls toward him, as the tide draws the sea. It was as if every follower could hear in his voice a faint echo of their own deepest desires. But in the still hours between meetings, when the fire burned low and the laughter faded, Voldemort sometimes heard another voice beneath his own. "You preach as I once did," Morven whispered in the recesses of his thoughts. "You build what I built brick by brick." Voldemort ignored it. He had silenced the old master 100 times before. Yet there were moments when he stood before his followers and saw their faces lit with worship, that he felt a shiver of déjà vu, as though history itself were repeating an unfinished spell. In secret, he continued his experiments. The Horcruxes multiplied, hidden in distant corners of the earth. One was buried in a forgotten tomb, another sealed within the walls of a manor older than memory. Each act left him hollow for a time, but stronger after. The loss of the soul became familiar, even comforting, like shedding skin. Still, not all magic could be mastered by will alone. There were nights when dreams tore through his mind like storms, visions of serpents devouring their own tails, of a great mirror shattering into countless pieces, each reflecting a different face of himself. Sometimes he woke with his wand in hand, spells burning on his tongue, the name Morven hanging unspoken in the air. To steady himself, he sought relics of Slytherin's bloodline, relics that might anchor his growing power. One such artifact was said to rest in the vaults beneath an ancient abbey in Somerset, a ring set with a black stone said to reveal the boundaries of death. Voldemort went there alone. The abbey had long been abandoned. Ivy crept through broken windows, and the wind whispered through its halls like the breath of ghosts. Beneath the altar lay a passage spiraling deep into the earth. He descended by wand light, the air growing colder with each step until he reached a chamber carved with runes older than English speech. At its center lay a stone table, and upon it the ring. It glimmered faintly, a single drop of darkness caught in gold. He reached for it and froze. The air shifted. From the far wall, a shape emerged, black and human-shaped, though no living man stood there. Its eyes gleamed like candlelight through smoke. "You cannot take it," said the figure. Voldemort's wand rose. "And who are you to forbid me?" "I am what you made me," the shadow replied. Its voice was his own, though softer, almost sorrowful. "I am the echo left behind by every soul you've broken. I am what remains when you divide yourself too many times." He hesitated. "You lie?" "Do I?" The shadow smiled. "Look at the stone, Tom." He did. Within the surface of the gem, he saw not his reflection, but faces, Morven's, the children of the orphanage, the boy who had died in the chamber, the countless victims of his experiments. All turned toward him, their mouths open in silent accusation. For a moment the Dark Lord faltered. A flicker of the boy he had been rose like a ghost of breath upon the glass. But only for a moment. "Power has no price I will not pay," he said quietly. He seized the ring. Pain flared through his hand like fire. The shadow screamed and vanished. When it was over, Voldemort stood alone, trembling slightly. The stone pulsed faintly against his palm, alive and warm, as though it possessed a heartbeat of its own. He slipped it onto his finger. The pain ceased, but from that day forward the whisper of Morven returned stronger than ever. "You saw what you are becoming," it murmured. "You saw your own end." "There is no end," Voldemort hissed aloud. "Only continuation. Then you will continue until nothing of you remains." He left the abbey without a backward glance, yet the sound of his own footsteps seemed to follow him far longer than they should have, echoing through corridors that no longer existed. Months passed and his influence spread. The circle became an army, though they did not yet call themselves Death Eaters. He taught them secrecy, patience, and fear. He sent them into the ministry, into schools, into the press. Soon, every whisper in Britain carried his mark. Dumbledore felt the tremor of his return long before the rest. "The old magic stirs again," he told his colleagues, but few believed him. The years had made him cautious, perhaps weary. Still, he searched, hoping to find some trace of the boy he once knew, the spark of humanity that might yet be saved. But the boy was gone. One night, as the moon rose red over the moors, Voldemort stood before his followers in a ruined manor. Candles lined the floor, their flames bending toward him as if drawn by breath. He raised his wand, and the air quivered with unspoken power. "My brothers and sisters," he said softly, "the world you know has grown old and timid. But magic, true magic, belongs to those who dare to shape it anew. We will remake the age. We will cast off the chains of mortality and fear. We will become the destiny denied to our kind." They fell to their knees. For the first time in years, The whisper inside him laughed, not mockery, but delight. "Yes," it said, "now you understand." Voldemort closed his eyes, letting the sound of their devotion wash over him like a tide. His shadow stretched long and black upon the wall, and for a heartbeat it was not alone. Another shadow overlapped it, older, taller, its edges bleeding into his own, until the two were one. In that moment, the legacy of Alaric Morven was fulfilled. The wizard who had once taught Voldemort dark magic lived again, not as a man nor as a ghost, but as the silent will that guided every step of the Dark Lord's reign. And far away, beneath the earth, in the ruined chamber where it had all begun, the serpents carved in stone stirred once more, their tongues flickering to the rhythm of a name the world would soon learn to fear. The age of peace was ended before the world even knew it was dying. In the beginning, the signs were small, rumors of disappearances, sudden storms breaking over quiet towns, a creeping cold in the air that no summer sun could dispel. Yet those who lived through those years would later say that the true beginning was not marked by thunder, but by silence, the silence of fear that fell wherever Voldemort's name was whispered. He had grown beyond even his followers' understanding. The circle that had once gathered in secret halls now spanned every corner of the wizarding world. They wore his mark proudly, a skull and serpent, branded into their flesh, glowing darkly beneath their sleeves. It was not loyalty that bound them to him, nor even fear, but enchantment, a tether of the soul that could not be broken. They were his hands, his eyes, his shadow across the world. From the ruins of the old order, he began to build his own. The ministry fell first, collapsing under its own cowardice. Then came the schools, the newspapers, the courts, all reshaped in his image. For the first time since the Founder's magic itself seemed to bow before a single will. Yet the more he conquered, the more he dreamed. His nights were not his own anymore. They were filled with visions of endless darkness and serpents made of fire, of voices calling from the farthest corners of his divided soul. In those dreams, he stood again before the torn portrait of Alaric Morven, the man whose teachings had set all this in motion. "Did you think conquest would silence me?" the voice would ask, low and calm. "Power is only the echo of its own hunger, Tom." And always he would awaken cold, the whisper still coiling behind his thoughts. It was during those years that Voldemort's followers began to fear him in truth. His temper was swift and merciless. At times he would pause mid-command, his expression distant, as if listening to someone unseen. Then he would smile faintly, and another life would end. Those closest to him learned not to speak his name unless summoned. The few who dared to defy him disappeared. Some were never found. Others were returned as reminders, eyes empty, voices gone. But power, for all its glory, is a prison of its own making. The man who had once sought immortality now found himself chained to it. His Horcruxes had scattered his soul across the earth, and though he could not die, he could not rest. He began to feel the weight of the fragments, their ceaseless pull, each one calling faintly in his dreams, and beneath them all, like a heartbeat beneath stone, he felt another pulse that was not his. Morven. No matter how deep he buried the name, it endured. It lived in the rhythm of his magic, in the curve of his thoughts. He began to realize that what he had done in the chamber all those years ago had not merely destroyed his teacher, it had bound them together. Every act of cruelty, every spell of domination, every drop of blood spilled in his rise only deepened the link. At times he could almost hear Morven's laughter woven into his own. One evening, in the quiet of his hidden sanctuary, a vast underground hall lit by silver flames, Voldemort stood before a mirror that had once belonged to his ancestors. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting not only the body but the soul. For a long time he studied his own reflection. His face was pale, carved by the years into something no longer entirely human. His eyes burned red with the light of the serpent, yet as he watched, the reflection began to change. A second figure appeared behind him, tall, robed, ageless, Alaric Morven as he'd once been. "You are persistent," Voldemort said softly. "You are incomplete," the reflection answered. "You cut away too much of yourself, and what is left is hollow. You divided your soul so thinly that even the dark cannot hold you whole." "I am eternal," Voldemort said. Morven smiled faintly. "Eternity is not life. It is the echo of what you killed in yourself. You have become my masterpiece, but you are not my heir. You are my mirror." The firelight flickered. For an instant, the two figures, teacher and pupil, merged upon the glass, indistinguishable. Then the mirror shattered. When the shards struck the floor, they did not scatter. They bled. Voldemort stood motionless, his wand trembling in his hand. From the broken glass, a thin mist began to rise, taking shape. It was not a ghost. It was something older, something that had been waiting since the night of the first ritual beneath Hogwarts. "I gave you knowledge," said the mist, its voice filled with many tones at once. "You gave me passage, and now we are bound beyond death or time." Voldemort's eyes gleamed. "You would claim to be my equal? I would claim nothing. I am what you made me." The air trembled. The torches burned blue. Voldemort raised his wand. "Then I shall unmake you." But even as he spoke, the mist folded inward, its shape slipping like smoke into his chest. He staggered, gasping. The hall spun around him. When he looked up, the room was still. But he was not alone within himself. He felt the presence settle like a second heartbeat, calm and vast. "We are one," it whispered. "At last." For days afterward, he did not speak to anyone. His followers thought it was strategy. In truth, it was battle. Within the fortress of his mind, two wills wrestled for dominance, both unyielding. One was cold and immortal, forged by ambition. The other was old as sin, patient and cunning. When he emerged again, he was changed. His movements slower, his words fewer, yet his magic burned brighter than ever. Spells that once cost him strength now answered him like breath. The sky itself seemed to darken when he spoke. And though his followers bowed lower than ever before, some whispered that their master's eyes were no longer his own. In the depths of night, when he stood alone before the windows of his citadel, he would see two reflections in the glass. One bore his face, the other smiled from behind. He did not know if it was victory or defeat. Far from his fortress, in the silent ruins of Hogwarts dungeons, the sealed chamber trembled once more. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the serpents carved in the walls turned their heads toward the east, toward the man who had woken them long ago. Somewhere, deep within that ancient stone, a voice began to laugh again, low, steady, and endless. The laughter of the wizard who had taught Voldemort dark magic. The end came quietly, like the closing of a book whose last page had long been written. Years had passed since Lord Voldemort first rose from shadow to reign over fear. His name had become a curse, his presence a legend of terror whispered even among those who claimed to follow him. Yet no power, however vast, stands forever unchanged. The more he sought to bind the world to his will, the more the world resisted. Rebellion stirred in corners of light, and even his most loyal servants began to falter beneath the weight of their master's endless demands. It was not defeat that frightened Voldemort. It was stillness. There were nights now when the world outside his fortress grew silent, and he found himself pacing the cold halls, hearing only the echo of his own steps. He felt no fatigue, no hunger, no need of sleep. Such things were long behind him, but the stillness pressed upon him like a question he could no longer ignore. What remains when there's nothing left to conquer? He had divided his soul until death could not touch him, yet each division left him emptier, less whole. And in the emptiness he heard it, the whisper that had never truly left. "Do you see now?" It was Morven's voice, calm as ever. The circle is complete. Voldemort stood before a tall window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "I destroyed you," he murmured. "You fulfilled me," came the answer. "When you tore your soul, you tore mine from shadow. We have walked together ever since. Did you not wonder why your magic grows darker as your years lengthen? Why your name alone chills the air? It is because I am within you. I am the part you cannot cast away." "You are nothing," Voldemort hissed. "An echo, a memory bound in dust." "Perhaps," said the voice, "but echoes can outlast the living." He turned from the window. "If you are within me, then I command you. I am the master." For a moment silence answered him. Then came laughter, soft, distant, like the first sound of rain. "Are you?" That night he sought to prove it. He gathered the relics of his immortality, the ring, the locket, the cup, the serpent's diadem. He laid them upon the marble altar in the heart of his citadel and drew his wand, black and gleaming as obsidian. "Finite Eternum," he whispered, "a spell to break every binding, to sunder all links." The room trembled, flames bent inward, the air turned to smoke. For an instant the Horcruxes shone with blinding light, and he felt his heart split again, not by loss, but by recognition. "You cannot destroy what you are," said the whisper. "Silence!" he cried. The torches flared, and before him, from the heart of the fire, a figure emerged. Alaric Morven, unchanged by the years, his eyes bright with terrible calm. "This is impossible," Voldemort said, stepping back. "You are dead." "Death is only a name for what men cannot rule," Morven replied. "You who sought to master death gave it to me as a gift. You have carried me ever since. But now our bond has ripened. The master and the student must become one." Voldemort raised his wand. "You are a ghost bound by my will?" "Nothing more," Morven smiled. "And yet I speak, and yet I stand before you." With a wordless snarl, Voldemort struck. Green light burst from his wand, searing through the air. The spell hit its mark, passing through the apparition, and struck him instead. He staggered, the room spinning. Morven's laughter filled the hall. "You see? We are the same. Every curse you cast upon me falls upon yourself." Voldemort fell to his knees. Pain shuddered through him, deeper than any wound. The fire dimmed. The air grew cold as ice. The shadows along the walls began to move, taking shape. Faces, hundreds of them, all the souls he had torn apart to forge his immortality. They circled him silently, their eyes hollow, their mouths whispering fragments of his name. "This is your eternity," said Morven, his voice gentle now, almost kind. This is the truth of your power. No. Voldemort forced himself to rise. I am still master of myself. Then prove it, Morven said, stepping closer. End me once and for all. He raised his wand again, though his hand trembled. His voice was little more than a breath. Avada Kedavra. The light flared and vanished. The room was empty. He stood alone, gasping. The relics upon the altar had crumbled to dust. The air smelled of ash and rain. At first, he thought he had won. The whisper was gone, the presence silent. He felt lighter than he had in decades. But when he looked into the mirror that hung on the far wall, he saw a stranger's face staring back. Not Morven's, not entirely his own. A fusion of both, the same sharp eyes, the same cruel calm, the same faint, knowing smile. He pressed a hand to the glass, and the reflection moved with him. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am what remains," said the voice within his mind. "No longer two, but one. You have destroyed the teacher and the student alike. Now there is only the lesson." Then the reflection faded. He turned from the mirror and stepped out into the night. The wind howled through the broken towers of his fortress, and far below the forests stretched like seas of darkness. For the first time in his life, he felt something close to peace. Cold, fragile, impossible peace. He lifted his wand toward the sky, and green light bloomed above the world, the mark that bore his soul. It shone bright for a moment, then began to fade. In the villages below, people woke in fear, yet no army came. No curse followed. The world simply grew still. The next morning, his followers found the fortress empty. His robes lay folded beside the shattered altar. His wand rested upon the stone, lifeless. Of the Dark Lord himself, there was no trace. Some said he had transcended life, becoming one with the shadows he had mastered. Others whispered that he had destroyed himself in the final act of defiance, taking his secret with him into the void. Only Dumbledore, when he heard the tale, said quietly, "No man who rends his soul can vanish. He lingers, whether in the living or the dead." And perhaps he was right, for deep beneath Hogwarts, in the old chamber sealed by centuries of dust, the serpents upon the walls stirred once more. Their eyes glimmered faintly, as if remembering an ancient promise. From the darkness rose a single whisper, soft as a breath, but filled with boundless power. "There is no death for the will that endures." Then silence. The castle slept again, dreaming of the boy who had once walked its halls, the boy who had sought a teacher in the dark, and became something far greater and far less than human. The tale of Alaric Morven and Tom Riddle was ended, but the magic they unleashed still lingered, woven into the stones of Hogwarts, waiting for the day when some other curious soul might descend into the depths, searching as Tom once had for forbidden knowledge. And when that day comes, the shadows will whisper once more, their voices joined in one. We are the beginning and the end. We are the lesson that cannot die.